making presentations. So I think I want to now take this time also to invite those who have their pieces of work that they think we can listen to. So kindly get in touch with us so that we're able to see when and how to schedule you so that you can make your presentation. Of course, the other one is really to appreciate our seniors, the professors and the doctors who once and every time they come here, we learn. So I want to thank them and really commend them for the good job that they're doing. And lastly, of course, for you, for your participation, thank you very much. I also want to encourage all of us to, be able to share, ask questions where you seem to have challenges. I know as I've always said, we join a PhD at different times, save those who are doing taught PhDs. But the rest of us who are doing PhDs by research, you're joining at different times. So you find today somebody is looking for a topic and another one is submitting a dissertation tomorrow. So sometimes trying to find work that meets everybody's demand and level of study. It's a little bit difficult, but I think my take on this is that if you open your mind and ready to learn, even if you're at a point of submitting your dissertation, I still think there is something new that you can learn every time you come in. But also for those ones who are just beginning, this is how the journey is. Wherever you find us, wherever you find people, just be open to learn something. At some point, you reach there and you refer to what we are talking about. So with those few remarks, I really want to thank you very much for being part of this call and for being part of this platform. I must remind all of us that for some weeks now, we have taken some time to look at theory, and this is what is actually happening in the main session as well from 4 to 6. Because theory is very important and very critical, so we have decided to take some time to look at theory. And last week, I loved the engagement that we had, how we use theory in quantitative research. And that's what we looked at last Sunday. And colleagues had a very intense discussion and able to give their views on the subject, and I was very happy. I think it's very good when you come out and share your views. It's very good. Sometimes you have what you have and you think that is what is correct, and yet might not be that correct. But also sometimes it's good for you to really check yourself. So once you participate in some of the things by asking questions and also by providing your own experience, the rest of us will be learning, but also for you, you'll be, not only will you be really getting confirmation that what you're working on is the right track, but also you help the rest of us to learn. So I want to really encourage you to continue with the same spirit. This morning, we just want to continue from where we stopped last week. We saw from the clip we shared, but also from your own experience and discussion, we tried to look at, first of all, do we need theory in our quantitative research? Do we need a theory in our quantitative research? And then how do we use theory in our quantitative research? And we had that discussion, but also from the clip that we watched, we saw a number of things. How we can apply theory in our quantitative research. And I told you that we also had some two short clips that we are not able to look at because of time. And today I thought that, okay, let's look at those two clips and we have a discussion on them. So we are going to look at theory in qualitative research. Theory in qualitative research. So I want to welcome you to with me to look at these two short clips. I hope time will allow us to look at all of them. Let's probably start with this one. But of course, here the main question is, how do I use theory in my quantitative research? Okay, I hope my gadget, let me first see here. If I share, okay, share the sound. Okay.
Hello, in this video, I'm going to talk about the use of theory in qualitative and mixed methods research. So in qualitative research, there are a few different ways that we use theory. So it might be used in the design and development of the research study because it might provide a broad explanation for a topic that we want to study or phenomenon we want to look at. It might provide a theoretical lens through which to view the phenomenon. But very often the theory is what is produced by the qualitative research. So rather than designing the qualitative research with the use of theory, it is often produced by the research itself. So it can be used as a theoretical lens, which is an overall orienting lens for question of gender, class, and race. But as I mentioned, we might use an inductive approach in qualitative research, where you're conducting this exploratory research and the end result is theory. So you wouldn't be using a theory in the design of the research, but it would be a product of the research. So you want to decide if you're going to use theory in your qualitative proposal if you are designing qualitative research. So you need to decide, are you starting with the use of theory to help provide some explanation for why you're conducting this research in this particular area and maybe what you expect to see? Or are you going to use theory not in the design of your study, but as an expected outcome of your study? Okay, so if we're looking for theory when we're reviewing the literature, or where should you place it when you are writing your proposal or your manuscript? If it depends on the type of study and what is being looked at. So studies that have cultural themes or theoretical lens, then you would learn about the theory that they're employing early on. So in the opening passages, in the introduction, early on, they'll be discussing the theory that is guiding the research from the beginning. In a study that has an emerging design or qualitative inquiry, it would also be at the beginning, but you're more likely to see some version of the theory. So a variation that has some kind of twist maybe that is specific to the phenomenon or the topic that is being studied. And then a study that's based on grounded theory, it means that that study is producing the theory. So the theory would be derived inductively rather than building the study around a theory. The theory is built around the study. So in that case, it would be written about at the end of the study. So when you get to the discussion, that's where there would be a discussion of the theory that emerged from the qualitative research that was conducted. So theory in mixed methods research, would inform the design, data collection, analysis, and interpretation, just like in quantitative research. So mixed method studies, you might use theory deductively, just like in quantitative research. So you might start with a theory that you are applying to your research, and that's guiding your hypotheses and so on. And you might include theory inductively, just like in qualitative research, or both. So that's the beauty of mixed method studies, is that you get to draw from whatever you need for studying that topic that can be contributed by both the quantitative and qualitative aspects of the research. Thanks so much for watching. That's all I have for you in this video, and I'll see you in the next one.
Okay. It was a very short one, but maybe there are a few things that I want us to note. Maybe first of all, to be sure that some of us have really taken interest in qualitative research. Maybe your research is in there, and you can now help us understand some of the things that are being spoken in the video. And I take an interest in some of the things that I think Professor Laura, I think, if I put it very well, emphasized last time. But critically, where do I locate the theory in my work? And I just wanted to try to go there. Sorry. Where do I locate the theory in qualitative research or mixed methods? And there are three things there that I want to interest you to look at and see whether this can apply to what you're doing. Where do I locate the theory in qualitative research? And this presenter is saying, if your study is within cultural themes or theoretical lens, then the theory should be in the beginning passages. It's also saying if the studies with an emerging design of qualitative inquiry, also at the beginning, and can be modified. And then it talks of studies based on grounded theory. And it tells us theory derived inductively and placed at the end. Okay. Now, colleagues who are handling these mixed methods or qualitative research, you might be able to help us here understand some of the things. Last time, I think when we began this, one of the critical questions that we're answering still this very question: where do I put the theory? Do I have to put a subset? Last time we were talking about where do I put philosophy? Do I have to put a subheading and background and say, okay, this is now I'm now writing about theory. Philosophy. And those are the questions that we're asking ourselves. Similarly, now we are here. We are still probably in the background of you. You're still writing your background. But where does one now locate theory? And so I want just to invite you to make some few comments on this, especially those who are, if you're doing mixed methods. Where is your theory? Where did you start introducing theory in your work? Okay. I'm trying to look through my chat here and see if there is any hand up yet. In qualitative research, where do I start introducing theory? with the work you're doing, with that experience, those who are doing qualitative research, at what point are you introducing your theory? Are you waiting and go and talk about theories in your chapter 2 of the proposal? What exactly are you doing? Can you help us? Okay, the class is totally silent. Feel free, unmute, and share your experience with us. Are we saying that in this class today, all the 42 people here seem to be, nobody is dealing with the qualitative research omics methods?
Yes, good morning, Joseph.
Oh, good morning. Kindly go on.
You know, we are still scrolling. We have not yet reached that level of handling qualitative. So
Yes.
we are still on the basics. So if you can take us through a bit to try to make us understand.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much, James. Okay, probably I think for the last 3 or 4 weeks, we've been looking at theory. We started by looking at philosophy. Where do I put philosophy in my background? And we had some demonstration here. I think I remember Jeremiah and another friend of mine from, I think, Makere, Maine, took us through where do we place this philosophy. Do we have to put subheading somewhere? And then, of course, I think the majority agree that yes, we may not need to put subheadings, but the way we write should be able to, the reader should be able to see some level of philosophy within your background. And I think we shared here a number of papers, and I think my friend Bernard, Osco, and I think who else, we looked at the papers that they are published, and we're able to see how they integrated philosophy in their work. Now we moved on to theory, and we now ask ourselves, when I'm writing my background, do I need to bring out theory? And how do I bring it in? Do I have to write subheadings? Of course, in some universities, I've seen some citations that appear that way, theoretical foundations and so on. But I think for us in Makere, I'm not very, very sure. But I think I've seen in some few books where the people have indicated that this is now the theoretical background and so on. But in most cases, I've seen many books where theory comes in without those kind of subheadings and so on. But of course, just like you have said, some of us are still behind, we are crawling, we don't seem to understand where we are. It's true. And I think when I started this conversation this morning, I said that a number of us, others are really submitting their thesis tomorrow, others are starting today. So that's why we keep on repeating a number of these things. So if you look at this, just this subsection of the clip that we watched, you'd find that this presenter was trying to tell us where and how you can begin to talk about your theory. And for her, she has decided to classify this, these studies in this form. Those with with cultural themes or theoretical lens. She advises, of course, that you begin to introduce your theory from the very opening passages. You begin to talk about theory. And then if this studies with an emerging design of qualitative inquiry. And I think at some point we will request one of the professors to talk about this. But that is when we are about to close. So she advises that at some point the theories, you begin to talk about theory actually from the very beginning, or it can also be modified, meaning that you may begin from the beginning, or you can actually talk about theory towards the end of your background and so on. So this is probably, James, the small background I can give as far as this very part is concerned. But I would have very much loved to hear from people who are doing qualitative research. They can tell us how they are doing it, how they have introduced this in their background. I still want to make one more call before we look at the second clip. If one or two people who are dealing with qualitative research or mixed methods, one or two people can really share their experience with us, how they are doing it, that would be very good for the rest of us to learn. Is there anyone? How is that possible in this big class of 52 people? How is that possible that there's nobody who can share his or her experience with us? Okay, maybe people have just woken up and trying to just get yourself in order. So let me not call anybody's name this morning. Let me first take us to the next clip we watch, and maybe after that we'll be able to make some contributions. So welcome with me to the next clip.
In this video, I will discuss the role of theory in qualitative research. And specifically, I want to focus on answering the question of whether you have to have a theoretical framework in your study. This is something that you ask me so often. Do I need to have, or do I have to have a theoretical framework in my research? And those of you who had a private lesson with me know that the answer is kind of no, but it's kind of no. So as you know, in qualitative research, there is hardly any right or wrong. I often say that, hardly any black and white. So, and what does this depend on? So it specifically depends on how you understand, how you define a theory. What is a theory? How you see the place of theory, the role of theory in the study, and most importantly, how you define theoretical framework. So that's why, hence this weird and confusing answer, because more often than not, when you ask me, do I have to have a theoretical framework in my study, there is a certain definition or certain understanding of what a theoretical framework is that you have, in which case my answer is no. But let's start from the beginning. So we will have to we'll have to break all of this down into small details in order to answer that question. I'll have to discuss briefly the role of theory, like I said. So what is the role of theory in research? Where does it manifest itself in qualitative research? And then define a theoretical framework. That's crucial. And after that, I will be able to tell you to give you my response, and you'll be able to not only understand my response, but also just make your own judgment as to the role of theory in your study. So firstly, like I said, let's discuss the role and place of theory in qualitative research. Let's understand what is the use of theory, what role it plays in qualitative research. So here, Collins and Stockton, or perhaps Stockton and Collins, I'm not sure. I'll put the reference on the screen and also in the description. When they discuss, it's a really good article, so I recommend reading it to explore the topic further. But when they discuss the place of theory, the use of theory, they list 4 common uses of theory in qualitative research, to which I also want to add one more. So the first one is the theory is being used in the discussions of epistemological and ontological positions, the philosophical paradigms. So I have a separate video on this topic. Of course, I won't be breaking this down into details now, but overall, this is where our first use of theory occurs. So when we talk about, as you know, you have to talk about your philosophical, the paradigms, the worldviews, and all of that. You have to talk about this, you have to define it. So that's the first way in which theory plays a role in how we see the world, what we understand about the world, our beliefs about how to research, how to study that world. So that's obviously quite an important role already. So the second use of theory is theory of research methods. Theory of research methods, in other words, methodologies. I also have a separate video about this. So again, I won't be listing the different methodologies, but overall, there are different theories. And I do explain in that video how the methodologies, which are case study and ethnography and this kind of overall, let's say, structures, overall templates for our study, how these methodologies have to do and what they have to do with theories. Because depending on, again, how you view the world, you will choose a certain methodology. You'll believe that a certain methodology is effective in the first place. So that's the second way in which theory does play a role in qualitative research. And then the third way is building theory through our findings. Again, we don't, and that's also something I discuss in another video when I talk about grounded theory. We don't always have to build a theory as such, but we do provide some kind of explanation. We're doing research and we provide some kind of explanation. So in this sense, we're building a theory. So that's from our findings, some kind of a theory starts to emerge, and that's the third way in which theory manifests itself in our research. Now, the fourth way is something I wish to add to the list before moving on to the final point that these two authors make. The fourth way is simply the role of existing theories, existing ideas, concepts, and understanding. So the role of our literature that we review in the literature review. That's also the role of theory, because of course you will develop some set of assumptions, some set of understandings before you embark on your research journey. So that's the fourth use of theory. And finally, the fifth use of theory, the fifth potential use of theory is when theory is used as a framework for our study, as a framework for our whole study. And in this sense, this guide or a framework is being applied to a study, including our data analysis. So you're using something, literally a framework or a model, a set of concepts that somebody developed. You're using that, for example, when you analyze your data or when you're planning your data collection methods. So for example, planning your interview questions, you're only exploring different elements from somebody's model, for example. And then when you analyze the data, you're also only looking for these elements from that model. So it's being used as I said, as a template, as a framework for our study. I will come back to this meaning of this theory or theoretical framework later on in this video, because I do believe that that's exactly what's relevant for answering our question of whether we need a theoretical framework. But as you see already, there are so many different uses of theory. So it's not just having this kind of a framework. The role of theory is evident in choosing methods and choosing the overall approach in our beliefs about research and what we do with our findings. So as another popular pair of authors say, Lincoln and Guba, I'm not sure how to pronounce that, it's not possible to not have any theory in our study. Although, as they say, we may have a very inductive and exploratory study, it's simply not possible to have no theory and no theoretical framework in our study. So now let's define theoretical framework. So that's the next stop on our way to answering the question of whether you need that theoretical framework. We now know about the role of theory and how it can manifest. So now, what is a theoretical framework? That's very important. So as Collins and Stockton, the guys I previously referred to, explain, a theoretical framework is at the intersection of the existing knowledge and previously formed ideas about complex phenomena. So it's kind of what I mentioned about the previous literature, assumptions, previous knowledge. Then the researcher's epistemological dispositions, which is also what I mentioned when I discussed the different paradigms and worldviews. And finally, a lens and a methodically analytic approach. So this will be both about the methodology that we choose and also specifically about how we approach data analysis, also a point I previously made. So as you can see from this definition, a theoretical framework in this meaning, it's not something that I previously mentioned as being a template or a structure, a model that we impose on our study, but rather it's something more dynamic. It's an intersection of different ideas and different knowledge. So it's our knowledge from the literature, it's our understanding of concepts. So when you, for example, conduct a study of identity, surely you're talking about some kind of literature, you're defining the term identity, you're adopting some view of identity, and there are different views as identity is something flexible and stable. There are different schools of thought. So you're choosing some kind of some way of thinking about identity. You're choosing certain definitions, you're choosing certain authors, certain schools of thought as a whole. So this will be, of course, this will essentially have an influence on your study. And coupled with this knowledge, this theoretical knowledge, are your assumptions about the world, your views, your philosophical assumptions, and then in addition to that, what plays a role are your methodological assumptions, and again your beliefs and approaches and how you want to approach this study. So this has a huge influence on the whole study, on how you even, or on what kind of study you want to conduct, what kind of research questions you want to answer, what methods you choose for your study. So obviously this theoretical framework in this sense is something that you can't really avoid. You absolutely have to have some sort of a set of beliefs, like I mentioned, to even start, to even approach your research. So from this perspective, Merriam concluded that it's not possible not to have a theoretical framework. Even if your study is very inductive, you absolutely have to have a theoretical framework, with which I would agree, because as I just explained, it's simply not possible to not have any of these beliefs that we discussed in this video, because then you're simply not ready to conduct your study. And then there is another interesting quote by Walcott, who compares the role of theory to taking vitamin C. So Walcott says, theory is something like physical exercise or taking vitamin C. Some people get hooked on it, even to excess. Others give it as little conscious attention as possible, but no one can do without it entirely. So that's the thing. You cannot do without any theory in your study. However, and this is a very important however, this does not mean that you absolutely have to have a theoretical framework in your study. So now I'm finally answering the question that I asked at the beginning of this video. But prior to that, if you're enjoying this content and learning something new from this video, I would really appreciate it if you give the video a like. Also, if you have any questions, feel free to ask these questions or post any comments under this video. And if you require a more detailed assistance, maybe something is still not clear and you want to meet me directly, face-to-face, then feel free to explore the different options for private tutorials that I list on my website. So what do I mean by saying that we do not have to have a theory or theoretical framework in our study? After everything I said in this video, after all these quotes that said you absolutely do have to have a theoretical framework and it's like vitamin and you cannot do without it, what do I mean? So now, to understand what I mean, let's get back to the different uses of theory that I listed at the beginning of this video. And the final one stated that you can use a theory as a guide or as a framework for the whole study. So as I explained, this in particular refers to data collection, where you may use the previous theory or a previously established model to frame your interview questions, to develop your data collection methods, to simply try to replicate, to use that study, replicate the findings, to see whether your findings are similar. And then this feeds into our data analysis stage. So as I said, you may only be interested, this would be a very didactic, in fact, study where you're only interested in finding things from that model or from that framework. You're not really interested in finding new things. You're not interested in developing some kind of new explanation from your data, but rather you're simply interested in checking, are these things, are these elements from that model present in my data? So in these discussions between me and my students, when they ask me, do I have to have a theoretical framework? Or they said, my supervisor or my teacher said, I have to have a theoretical framework that's guiding my study, that's guiding my analysis. That's the kind of understanding of theory that that we arrived at. So, and this is what I said before when I said the answer is no, assuming that this is your understanding of a theoretical framework. And very often, this proves to be your understanding of a theoretical framework. In this sense, as I always say, you absolutely do not have to have such framework. In fact, I don't really like the idea of having such framework in a qualitative and exploratory and usually quite inductive research, because as I always explain, this limits your findings. This kills, so to speak, the creativity and the potential of your study to really contribute new knowledge to the topic. Because instead of being inductive and being exploratory and providing new knowledge and new understanding that emerges straight from your data and your context and your participants, you're simply narrowing everything down and limiting your findings to ticking the boxes for elements from somebody else's theory to see if that is present in your context. And this I don't like and I don't support. Of course, there are studies where this makes sense, but this is just to say that you're absolutely not expected and required to apply this kind of practice to your study. And it seems to be a very common misconception that, in fact, you do need to do that. So in that sense, you absolutely don't have to have a model or a framework. And otherwise, as we kind of established in this video, you will have a theoretical framework understood as a set, a mixture of all these assumptions and knowledge and beliefs that I mentioned. In that sense, inevitably, you will have a theoretical framework and some set of beliefs prior to embarking on your study. And this video...
Okay, there we are. Yes, his views there, and we've listened to him attentively, and I guess we can can open the floor for discussion. But even as we do that, I think he has talked about two things. He has talked about the role of theory, and he gives something which is very close or same to what we've seen in the previous video we looked at, but also to what we looked at last Sunday. But also he makes mention of something interesting about the theoretical framework, and I don't know if someone was able to capture the definition there. But I wouldn't want to preempt what you have been able to hear and what you have seen. I would gladly want to throw this whole thing back to you, and especially people whose work is qualitative or mixed methods. What we are looking at here is basically how have you integrated theory in your work from the very beginning, from your background and going forward. They have told us here the role of theory and where theory is located in your work, and that's the purpose of the first clip that we looked at. How do I locate theory in my work? They've told us from the beginning, saying that if you are following some kind of arrangement, then it's towards the end. In the first video, this was categorized And we're given, the presenter tried to locate the theory in her work at different stages. But I want to hear from you. If you're doing mixed method or qualitative work, number one, is there a theory anyway? Number two, how have you tried to integrate it? At what point? Is it at the beginning? Is it at the middle? It is at the end? Where? Let's first forget about the theoretical framework. I think we are not there. But what I was interested in here is, where do you locate your theory? And then number two, what is the role of that theory? Just like what we saw last Sunday. For quantitative researchers, we saw clearly where and how we apply a theory in our work. But now for qualitative research, I want at this point to really open this up and give you opportunity to share your ideas with us. But at some point, I would really very be glad to leave some 5 minutes for, we have professors here to try to guide us. We don't need to, every time we walk away from our session and we have thrown a number of things here and there, then we just go away. We don't know whether what we shared, we don't pick the ideas from the professors and doctors. So this time around, I think we want to leave some few minutes to allow the seniors to come and put their input and clarify some of the things that might be confusing us. So I open this for discussion. What is your take? What is your experience with theory and qualitative research? Again, you may be doing quantitative, your research may be quantitative, but you have some idea to share with us. So you have a question. All those things are welcome. So the floor is open. We have about 10 minutes to share this.
Thank you, Joseph. This is Michael.
Yes, Michael, go on.
Yes, of course, I'm beginning, so I haven't integrated any theory in my work. But
yes,
this is, of course, very important for me to know how to go about using theory in a qualitative research.
yes,
what I understood from the video is that it is not a must to have a theoretical framework so that it is seen in your work. You can have it implicitly so that it is there in your work, but not having a section with a subheading or whatever. Another issue about qualitative research and the theory is that we can develop our own theory. We can develop our own theories so that the work is inductive. You start with your theory, then you start from it to do more work as you go ahead with the research. In that, you first do from your qualitative research, you develop a certain theory. And in addition to that we should not go into creating a section of theoretical research, of theory, so that we can maintain our capacity to be creative. The video was indicating that if we go, we think so much about creating a certain section of theory or the theoretical framework, we might lose that opportunity to be creative, to go on to explore. So basically, I learned that within qualitative research, a theory can be implicit, not explicit, so that it is there in your work, but you don't have to give it a headline. Thank you so much, Joseph.
Okay, thank you very much, Michael. That is Michael giving his response there, and he says he has not done much, but imagine somebody who has not done much, but is here giving us some kind of response. I think, Michael, that is very good, and I implore you to continue that way. That is the way to go. Colleagues, I am not looking for perfect answers here because they are not there at this time. I want your response, and then after that, I know we will invite the professors to guide us. So please don't, fear to share your idea and prove what you understood from what we have shared this morning. I always have people who always bail me out when everybody else is quiet. Jeremiah, are you on call today? I saw somebody like Jeremiah. What happened? Did you escape? Okay. Bernard. Okay. Jeremiah,
hello?
yes, we can hear you, whereas your network is a bit...
My network is a bit unstable. Thank you very much, Lasu, for this moment. Like everyone else, I may not have much to say. I haven't quite or reached the stage where we talk about a theory that I'm using. But from the readings and the discussions, maybe a little comment that I can make with regards to use of theory in qualitative research. I'm not qualitatively oriented though, but what I've gathered so far is that the use of theory in qualitative research is very flexible. Flexible to the extent that you may have theory at the beginning, you can use it in the middle, or it can be something that is evolving as the work goes on and eventually comes towards the end. These are various ways I've come across through which theory can be treated in qualitative research. And it has come out clearly from the presenter, the fellow there, and what he consistently talked about was that it is not possible that you will not have a theory. You will often have a theory. What you may not have, however, is a theoretical framework.
Correct.
I understood him to have made that kind of distinction.
Correct.
That's all I say.
Yeah, thank you very much, Jeremiah, all the way from Moi University in Eldoret, School of Agriculture. Is that right?
Yes, School of Agriculture and Natural Resources, Department of Agricultural Economics and Resource Management.
Okay. Yeah, I want to know my colleagues. Thank you very much, Jeremiah, and that can really show me that you were very, very attentive because you summarized what exactly the video was all about. What about others? Did we set the gadgets and go back to sleep? I might be speaking to the gadgets and the people are not there.
We are on.
Sarah. Thank you. Oh, sometimes I need some assurance. If you leave me alone, I will begin to imagine that I'm speaking to the gadgets and people are going to sleep.
We are listening sincerely.
Okay,
it's a
thank
very
you.
good discussion, and as somebody indicated, some of us are still in the crawling stage, whereby we have not actually known even where to place the theory, and even to identify a theory that we want to use in our research. So we are really learning.
Yes.
We need also, I think when the professors come on, we need to have a more detailed explanation of what a theory is and the what are the prerequisite, or what are the what makes you use what theory, which
Okay.
theory. So picking a theory to use in your research, it depends on what. That's what I mean. So we are learning actually.
Thank you very much, Sarah. And I am sure Professor Laura has written down your concern, and I'm sure she's going to respond to you shortly after we have listened to Jonah. Please, Jonah, go on.
No, thank you very much, Julius, for this. Yeah, for listening attentively. To go some in the middle, but this is my take. One, in respect to the theory, more especially in mixed method approach. As I said even in the previous session, that the theories are very important because in the study, because the hope in designing and shaping the direction of your study. It is reported even that in some instances, you may even have to look at the tools that were used in that theory. Such that it's possible, and most cases too, that you can even pick a leaf from some of those tools to help you guide the direction of your study. So, and maybe attempt to move back to my sister who has just made a presentation with respect to at what level you can have a theory almost at all levels of your study. You can have called for, and this is in the beginning of your study, more especially correlating those who have I beg your pardon, correlating your direction or your area of study, thinking a theory which explains, because the more of the use of this field is explain your idea, your DV and ID. So in this perspective, it is either you can buy with it, more especially in qualitative, but in mixed method, this is also important that we always have a theory to guide, a theory to guide your direction of your study. This is what I can share with you.
Wow. Jonah, you have very nice information in there, and but the network has a bit made us miss some of the things that you're saying. But I want to hope that the members have managed to.
Yeah, about that, my
okay, but thank you very much. I can imagine even in up where you are up country and the network's not disturbing. I mean, it's not stable, but you're able to share with us. I think that is very, very encouraging. Thank you very much. I have a message here to read, and probably let me read it. This is from Thompson. He says, my take home is theory guides in developing methods, data collection, data analysis, especially if you are doing a deductive study. So that is from my brother there, Thompson Odoki. Okay, the other one is from David is saying, as we struggle with the question where we have to locate theory in our studies, can anyone help me to clarify on the what is the difference between theory and theoretical framework? That is David. For him, is saying, although we are struggling with where to locate the theory, for him is saying, before we look for where to put it, can we first answer this question? What is the difference between a theory and then theoretical framework before you start looking for where to put it? So somebody help us there. David is asking, and we are very many here. We must find a way. Yes, Michael.
Yes, thank you, Joseph. This is a learning platform, so sometimes we have to try and bring out what we know about something so that they can know whether we fully know or we lack some information. But what I know about the theory and the theoretical framework is that a theory is an idea of someone which is ready for any scholar to prove, including even the one that has developed it. But the way we use a theoretical framework is putting together all the information concerning the theory, the author of the theory, the meaning of the theory, including its assumptions, and then we connect it with our study. In that way, we have built a theoretical framework. So in summary, a theoretical framework is a result of putting together all the components or the information concerning a certain theory, starting from the author, the assumptions, the people who have used the theory before, of course, the scholars, then lastly, connecting that theory with our work in research. That's what I understand so far, and I pray that we get more information from others so that I can also continue to learn. Thank you so much, Joseph.
I like your attitude, Michael. Thank you very much. You're saying you want also, whereas you're giving your opinion, you also want to learn from others, and I think that's very, very interesting. Can we hear from Wilson? Myself and Michael want to learn from you, Wilson.
Oh, yes. Thank you very much, Joseph. In addition to what my colleague has said, I want to say that a theory is a proposition that is based on assumptions, which can be approved or disapproved. Then, with the framework, briefly, I want to say that it's a roadmap that gives you a direction of your study. So basically, that's what I can add on. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Wilson. Before you run away, you know our time. We are already cheating the next session, but from what you've mentioned, there are two things I want to learn. You say a theory is a form of proposition that can be approved or disapproved. Did I get you right?
Because it's based on assumptions.
Okay. What about a hypothesis? Can you have some idea on what a hypothesis is?
Yes. A hypothesis, well, it's more of the same, but I think with a hypothesis, it guides your study. You base on what
you think could have or could predict something, and then you go to the field, you collect data to approve or disapprove.
Okay. Thank you very much for your contribution, and certainly that seems to raise a number of other questions. But that's okay. That's how we learn. One submission gives rise to other questions and so on. But certainly from that one, we want to maybe continue from there next week. Of course, a number of the things were talked about, but as I said, we are not we are trying to put together our ideas, but we have here senior scholars. We have people who have been in the field for years, and they rightfully deserve those titles. So I don't know, but our time is fast spent. But I need to really bring this to an end. But I think, Jonah, I don't know whether I might. Yes.
You can finish up a few questions as you prepare for the next session. There is some connection issues with some of our facilitators. Please, you can extend for maybe 10 minutes as you finish up those pending questions.
Wow. Thank you very much, Doctor. That would have given us some more time, some 10 minutes. Can we exhaust this question of that was posed by David? David is saying, before we start struggling with where to locate a theory, for him he's saying, first help me. How is a theory different from a theoretical framework? And we have had a discussion from Michael. We have also had a discussion from Wilson. Can we now hear from one or two more people? What's your take? What is a theory and what is a theoretical framework? Are two the same or they are different? Then I also added a hypothesis, because Wilson gave us something interesting. He says a theory is a preposition that can be proved or disapproved. And I thought we would have some further discussion there so that we can help one another. But David, are you on and taking notes?
Yes, okay. I'm on. Morning, Joseph.
Good morning.
How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm here trying to call people to help us. You are not alone. Even me have a problem with that. What is the theory? What is the theoretical framework? So you are not alone. So Jeremiah wants to help us. David, thanks. Take your book and write some notes. Jeremiah has a hand up. Jeremiah, go on.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yes, Jeremiah, we have given you the floor. It is possible his network is also a problem. Jeremiah, can you hear us? Jeremiah has a question, but his network seems to be a problem. But as we wait for Jeremiah, Mr. Kazia is saying a theoretical framework describes the theoretical underpinnings of your work based on the existing research. A conceptual framework allows you to draw your own conclusions. mapping out the variables you may use in your study and the interplay between them. So that is from Mr. Azia. We have information from Emily Chelangat. She says, I think a theory is generally a line of thought used to understand how something is the way it is. Therefore, a theoretical framework is how a particular theory or theories is used, is guiding a particular study. Okay, you see, yes, sir. Yes, please, Bernard, please go on.
Thank you, Joseph, and every member this morning on this topic. This issue is kind of confusing or sometimes crossing borders. There is almost no line between those two things, and including myself, between a theoretical framework, conceptual framework. I have listened to what members are presenting, and sometimes it looks like they are interchanged. But from the little I know, I've read here and there, especially in the discipline of economics. I'll give an example. I don't know if this is even a theoretical framework or conceptual framework. Now, you might be interested in examining or assessing determinants of demand for electricity or for anything. So what we write in economics first is the theory of demand, because you are talking of demand for something or demand for electricity. So you will specify, or theoretically you will state, the relationship between price and quantity demanded. And that's what they are always papers and scholars writing as theoretical framework. So when it comes to conceptual framework, in fact, in economics, it becomes it's like you are using the two interchangeably when we are talking about these issues. So really, I'm here to also learn from others between the line between those two things. Looks like as you cross from one discipline to the other, the coin keeps flipping. Thank you, Joseph.
Thank you very much, my brother. That's why I'm a little bit cagey sometimes in giving my own opinion in anything. I try to let people share. I'm always very cagey because when you look at what happens in economics, you sometimes have to derive your theoretical model, and you really have to pick things here and there from some theories, but then you don't know whether, because you have used theory to come up with the theoretical model, so you don't know what you have, whether it's a theoretical framework or it's a theory itself or a function. So, but by and large, we have here the professors. One day I think we'll take this up, and I think we need to get professors from different disciplines, and they look at this and we see where is the line. For now, even me, I struggle, but sometimes I'm very cagey with my position. To sharpen the piece, my sister is saying theory, but there is something down. Okay, theoretical framework is a tool of thinking which can be criticized and upgraded by other readers. It is not something one can see. It is an intellectual activity, A conceptual framework is the entire plan of the study. And she has referred to the quotation made by Prof. Julius last time, and he talked of the architectural plan of the entire house. But then he associates this to herself. She says, my view. Is not calling it the view of professor. So thank you very much to Shabit, because you are owning your own, you're only quoting, but you're owning this response. So we know this is your opinion. It's not for Professor Julius Chikoma. Thank you very much, Peace. Then I have Emmanuel. Emmanuel says, I feel a theory is a tentative general idea. A tentative general idea. He feels that way. That explains unobservable phenomena, while a theoretical framework is a structural plan that links that general idea and your own idea in the study. Okay, so members, I said from the very beginning that save the few professors and doctors that I know are listening and their own, the rest of us are students and we share our ideas freely. At this point, I have no authority whatsoever to categorize correct and incorrect answers, but I want to welcome all of us to give our views, so that from here helps the planners to pick some few things and direction how to help all of us, because from here we're able to see, the seniors are able to see whether we are on the right track in our discussion, or we don't even see the way out of the forest. You can find yourself in the forest and you move this way and it's not ending, you come back this way, and so we are in that forest. So we are looking for the way out. So please feel free, share with us. Wilson is saying, thank you. You were right to say that each answer given raises more questions. From Bernard's response, something new comes up. How does a theory differ from a model? So that's well. So Bernard, better unmute and answer this one right away, as I know the 10 minutes we're given are already spent. So make a comment on this and then we hand over.
Wilson has added the water into something now. Maybe we should actually pick it from there.
I think
but
so.
A model, a theory in my area of talking, they belong to the same group. So that's where we always derive those, but I think you'll talk about that more. That's interesting.
Yeah. True. Thank you very much, Bernard, and everybody who has really participated this morning. I'm a happy person this morning because people have decided to be part of this and own this 1 hour and participate and give their views. For me, this is very, very, very important because I usually take note of all these things you say, and it helps when we are planning what we are going to share next. As I just want to confirm from Dr. Ahmad whether we are good to go. If not, I will just take one more question. And I think it's not a question. This is Mr. This name Arima. I don't know whether this is okay. Arima Subair Isa. When I see the name Isa, then I know it's a gentleman. So it says a theoretical framework is a tool, a roadmap that guides your study theoretically. While theory provides or entails concrete evidence that supports or does not support your area of study. Mr. Trina Masiko, I want to give you the floor. I can see you're trying to speak and your network is failing you, but can we hear now? It looks like you're stable now.
Yes, good morning, colleagues.
Good morning, brother.
I've just had a connectivity problem, but I wanted to say something about theory. A theory in research is something that underpin your study. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I know sometimes the network is really frustrating, but thank you for struggling and making your way through and give your response. Thank you very much. I know one person for sure in this platform. When you talk about theory, when you talk about theoretical framework, when you talk about conceptual framework, I know one person for sure who has a passion for this, and that is Professor Laura. He will tell you about those boxes, he will tell you when you're drawing them, be aware that even your questionnaire is going to come from here. He will tell you that this must connect with this and this and that. She will tell you all the things. So, David, at some point, of course, this I'm not saying that the rest of the people they don't have passion for this, but I want to encourage that at some point, Professor Laura sits somewhere in Bugolobi. Kindly beg her, go find time and go there. She will be of very great help to you. After all this that we have given you, you might find that in the end, we are students, we cannot give you what is really final for you to work with, but I've given you a reference. She will not ask for consultation, that one I'm sure. Thank you very much. Again, let me, before Mr. Matiama comes in, allow me first to check with Dr. Walugembe whether we are good to go.
Joseph, you can take Matiama, as now I can take over and we'll see what will proceed.
Thank you very much. Mr. Matiama, the floor is yours.
Chair, can I say something as you invite Matiama?
Thank you very much, Prof. Go on. You're allowed.
Okay, I'm really very sorry to cut your process and interfere. But I've been listening, especially to your discussions about the concept of a theory, right? And I have had the definitions that you have all given. But I want to, first of all, encourage you. We have a series of lectures on theory building on YouTube. If you can go through them, I'm not saying that they're the best, but if you can listen to them and take time, most of the questions that you are asking will actually be answered. You will not have those questions. In those lectures, we attempt to bring out the different definitions of what a theory is. And then from there, we move from the theory, of course, to conceptual frameworks and the theoretical frameworks. And we attempt to also draw a distinction and also show you how difficult it is for people to draw a distinction between theoretical frameworks and conceptual framework. And incidentally, the debate around those two is ongoing. Nobody has attempted to put that debate to rest. There's somebody in the background. Let me see how I can mute most of them so that I want to encourage members to mute their mics so that we don't get an interruption. I'll tell you that one of the definitions of what a theory is, especially if you have bothered to look at the works of Swanson, he really says that a theory describes a specific realm of knowledge and explains how it works. And that is very important. That means you cannot limit a theory to the simple hypothesis testing, right? Although when you put together all of those hypotheses, which will explain a realm of knowledge in a certain area, you can actually come up with a theory. So that is one aspect. And in fact, when you follow that kind of thinking, you will discover that people who are involved in theory development have three major challenges. And one of them is the challenge of incompleteness, right? And the second challenge is that of having methods, right, which are being used in theory development, which are inappropriate. And the third one is to really have those methods that are totally overwhelming. And if you look at the perspective of incompleteness, then you discover that that's where most of your definitions lie, where theory is often considered as only a hypothesis, right? Or is limited to conceptualization. I don't know whether you are hearing me. Again, there are many people here that like Mr. Bichi and Hosea Gazai who have unmuted. So most of your definitions fall under that category of incompleteness. That's a definition of theory, where your theory is considered as only hypothesis or it is limited to conceptualization. And that's why when we go through the phases of theory building, right, we discover what a theory is from all these three perspectives that I've given you. And therefore, if you follow this aspect of incompleteness, the full process of theory development and the phases which go beyond theory conceptualization are simply ignored. And they have reasons, right? The reasons they have is that, one, we must get answers to the problem. So there's a practical rush to find answers. And the second reason is because there is a desire to gain recognition and possible wealth, right? I mean, if you do something right, and do you remember during the period of COVID, right, how people were rushing to develop vaccines and so forth? They don't go through the entire process, right? So, and the third process, the third reason why they do some of these things is because they lack knowledge about theory standards and methodology. And you can't blame them. If, for example, you were brought up in a very stable family, right, and your mother did a great job in that family, the only person you'll always give credit to for knowing how to do things is actually your mother. But for somebody who was brought up in a troubled family and mother was a problem, he will tell you exactly the opposite thing, right, about women, right, and about her mother. He will probably say is the worst thing I've actually met on this planet Earth. I mean, both of them are correct, but they're coming from different perspectives, and you have to listen to what they are saying so that you understand. So that is the aspect of incompleteness, right? And you can look at theory as a hypothesis or only limited to conceptualization because you are rushing, right? And the only thing you have learned, you have studied over the years is for you to know that a theory is a hypothesis, and that's all. The second aspect is the inappropriateness. People use methodologies which are inappropriate, and that's why they don't go through the whole entire theory building process. So the fellow will know, yes, I'm going to use a theory, for example, in this study, I'm going to mix the theories. When you look at the background, the way they write the background and so forth, you don't actually see things there, right? I mean, you don't see the right coherence of philosophy and the way theory has been integrated in the background to actually inform the study. The whole process is mechanical, right? But the fellow wants a PhD, right, within possibly the next 6 months or 1 year. And of course, that is for obvious reasons, because he's going to use a PhD to either get a very big job somewhere or to be promoted, right? So again, when you look at this inappropriateness, you discover that many authors, right, actually present theory, which is limited, right, by what I would call ideology, right? So here we are referring to ideology framework, right? Such as those who are empiricists, right? They take this empirical kind of framework, right? And another will say, yes, we are using critical science, right? We are taking a feminist perspective, right? And of course, you discover that in this case, the nature of the discipline and the aspects which are being studied, right, will always preclude ideology biases in this case. So, and that's a perspective, right? So you have the incomplete perspective, then you have the inappropriate tools, methods, and so forth, right? And that's why some people mix theories, which are not supposed to be mixed, by the way. And the fellow will tell you, I have 5 theories, but when you look at how he's discussing this and is dismissing the other one, and he tells you it is guiding the development of the conceptual model, you don't actually see that, right? And the third process is the which I gave in the theory definition and theory building, is having something that is overwhelming, right? And that's why sometimes you see some authors and some scholars who present what I would call exhaustive, right, and tedious methodologies, right, for developing a theory and also defining a theory, right? So they will take you through a process, right, that is really very tedious, a process that is very exhaustive. And when you look at the methodologies, right, the methodologies are also tedious, and they'll tell you, yes, this is how we do it, right? And of course, we have a number of examples for some of you, especially in this category of having something that's very exhaustive. If you have bothered to look at the works of Robert Dubbin, right, you'll find that kind of thing there. I can't remember exactly what the title is, but you can actually go there and try to pick this information. So as you can see, and that's why it is very important for us to understand the two processes. One, what we call theory building, right? And 2, theory testing. And the moment you understand that, then you'll be able to know what a theory is, and you'll be able to draw a distinction between a theory and a hypothesis. Although when you look at the two and you are rushing, right, and you are using that simplistic kind of thing, you will actually say a theory is a hypothesis, right? When in the actual sense, it's not simply a hypothesis, but the number of other things that go with it. And that's why I told you a theory describes a specific realm of knowledge, right? And explains how that knowledge actually works, right? And that is slightly beyond maybe okay, let me talk about models again, because I had something coming in, a conceptual model, theoretical model, and so forth, right? Now, if you work with the theory very well, and you're probably you probably want to test a theory, or you want to build a theory for that matter, right? If you are coming from the anti-positivistic perspective, right? and you start with the field, you start with the observations, you start with the reality out there, you'll be able to come up with some kind of mind map, right? Mind maps. And those mind maps can be refined to what you will call a model, right? And that model will guide the theory building process. So you can actually call it a conceptual model because it has a number of concepts, right, which are picked from reality out there. And later on, you will see a theory emerging, right, out of that. Of course, you will have a number of propositions in that model, which are derived from reality out there. Now, it is also possible that if you are mixing theories or probably you are testing, you pick concepts, right? And those concepts are put together in some kind of what you call conceptual or theoretical framework, right? Now, I'm still using the two conceptual and theoretical, right, to demonstrate to you how the discussions on this perspective of theoretical and conceptual framework has never been put to rest. You'll find some scholars actually saying that when you mix a number of theories, right, and you pick a number of concepts from these theories, what you come up with is actually a conceptual framework. Other scholars will tell you, if you use one theory and you are testing a theory, right, and it helps you in developing a model, right, that will end up, that will have a number of hypotheses that will be tested and a number of assumptions around it, then you come up with a theoretical framework, right? So others limit it to the use of one theory, right? While the other one is taken to the use of many theories. But when you read literature, you find again a mix-up, right? Some people saying it the other way around, right? And that's why you need to read. It's not so easy for you to come here and say, a conceptual framework is this, a theoretical framework, and these are published papers, by the way, published books, published papers, and most of the fellows who are saying this are actually experts in their areas. So you have to read yourself so that at the end of the day, you're also, you're able to have a position about some of these things, having that background behind you, that this one said this, the other one said that, etc. So it's not a matter of cramming things. It's a matter of understanding so that you can also dismiss, right? You can also join the bench of scholars who are discussing certain things and make a contribution, right? So that's what I'm trying to say. So when we go to models, theories versus models, right? We all know that with advancement in quantitative methodologies, right? Advancements in multivariate testing, right? Scholars increasingly examine a variety of independent variables, and that's where Bernard was coming from, right? A variety of independent variables and their effects on a wide range of outcomes, right? So you can have complex mathematical analytical tools like structural equation modeling, right? Like path analysis, hierarchical linear modeling, etc., etc. So those models, right, they will make life easy, right? They will make it easy to test several ideas, right, without having difficulties, right, in understanding what is really happening. And in this case, right, this process will help you in theory building, right? And that's why you have those statistical tools, statistical methods, because if you look at path analysis, multivariate, you can have so many, and that's why you are able to test for mediation, moderation, you test for all sorts of things, direct relationships, indirect relationships. Yes, in theory building, right, these will be there. They help you to test that kind of thing. So you cannot reduce a theory, right, to a model, right? Right, but those tools that exist will help you to build a theory, right, that will bring together knowledge that will explain, right, particular aspects in certain areas. So you use them, right, for testing purposes. maybe I should also let you know, right, that theories, as I stop here, because I know that the person who is going to make a presentation has a lot to say, and I don't want to take more time because we have already taken over 30 minutes. But as I conclude, right, theories and models are two different things, right? Theories almost always incorporate models, but models do not necessarily require theories or a theoretical foundation. And that will be probably a discussion for next time, because I know many of you may not agree with me on that perspective. Over to you, Mr. Lasso.
Wow. I think this has been very, very clear. And I wouldn't want to add even one word, but I want to make a request before I before I conclude this. If you are in and you've logged in with more than one gadget, I'm receiving so many calls. People are unable to log in. Kindly, if you've logged in with two gadgets, you may consider switching off one so that other people would also get the chance to log in. And also finally, just to re-echo what Professor said, there is a lot of work that Professor has done in YouTube. Consider visiting and getting some of those videos and listen to them. There are quite many and very, very helpful. Some of us who've listened to them many times and we've gained a number of things. We've learned a lot of things from there. So I want to invite you all to find time, go to YouTube and look for the work of Professor Joseph Mtai. You don't even need a procedure. Just put there Professor Joseph Mtai, YouTube, and you'll get, you don't even need to look for links or whatever. May I just put there Professor Joseph Mtai on my search engine, and that you'll get a lot of work on philosophy of science and economics and all these conferences and so on. The work is there. So don't worry looking for links. I'm seeing many people asking for links. Just do that and I can assure you you'll get there because I've tried it and it works. At this point now, I know it is rare that we can take actually 40 minutes of the other session, and that means this discussion today sparked a lot of issues. In fact, it pulled off Professor from his own to come and highlight a number of issues. Professor, thank you very much, and we are grateful. At this moment, friends, allow me to stop here, but invite my senior brother, Dr. Ahmad, to give us the next steps. Thank you very much. Over to you, Doctor.
Thank you very much, Joseph. And thank you, Tim. I would like to begin with the announcement made by Joseph. If you have logged into gadgets, please remove one and give others room. Two is also to appreciate all those who have been able to cause a very meaningful discussion in the first session. And Professor Mtai for coming in to really provide some light in these discussions. Allow me really welcoming into our second session, which we are going to start a little bit late, but we appreciate that all our speakers are now on. Allow me welcome our own Professor Julius Chikoma. Professor Chikoma, as I earlier mentioned, is a committed researcher, a researcher by nature, and Professor Chikoma is currently the Deputy Director of the Graduate Research Center at Macquarie University, Graduate School. And last time he gave directions, and for those who want to find him in Makerere University, Professor has been before the Deputy Dean Faculty School of Humanities, and he has been extremely contributing to our discussions. Every year, Professor Chikoma gives us almost a month plus to discuss these issues. We have used now a month of discussion, 4 weeks of discussion, and we're still moving on together. Professor Chikoma, we appreciate you. And Professor Rola Orobia, Professor Rola is the Deputy Dean at Makerere University Business School, Graduate School. He sits in Bugolobi, as Joseph said, and Professor Rola is another very committed lady I've met in research. Very committed and very free and always ready to share her knowledge. We appreciate both of them for the commitment advanced in this area, and we think that they are doing a great job. Members, you're welcome, all of you from your respective universities. This is a free platform putting together PhD students to acquire and share knowledge. All those from South African universities, East African universities, universities from West Africa, universities from Asia, and locally here. We appreciate all of you for the support and the commitment, and we think that this platform will actually enable us move ahead. Allow me at this moment invite Professor Julius Chikoma to share with us his discussions on connecting theory and methods, but with a focus on phenomenological approach. And the focus today will be on that. Professor Chikoma will give us his insights into it, and possibly we can have a small discussion and conclude the day. Thank you, and Professor Chikoma, you're welcome.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ahmed Welgende, and good morning, everyone that has tuned in on this platform this morning, or whatever time it is for those who may not be in this particular location on the continent. And my apologies for not being able to start the normal time that I was expected to start. I had some connection problems, and I'm asking for your indulgence if the PowerPoint is not able to come through. Then we will just talk through this this morning's discussion around the application of a theoretical lens within a particular methodological tradition in qualitative research. And let me try to share the screen if possible. If it doesn't, we'll definitely just continue. You will recall that last time when I hope you can hear me.
Yes, I can hear you.
Can hear you, Professor.
Yes.
Okay. Because I saw here something like microphone off. But I'm just trying to see if I can share the screen. If I can't, then we'll move on without it.
Let me connect you.
Because I'm using a phone or a tab. So I'm not sure whether that's...
You have the rights, you can actually share.
Okay. Let me just go to the, okay. Can we see it?
Not yet.
Can we?
Not yet.
Not yet.
Something doesn't add up. And so if it doesn't, I think we'll just continue.
Are you using more than one gadget?
No, I'm only using one gadget.
Okay, but you have the rights.
Let me try one more time. I think I'm having difficulties. I should just give up that aspect, but you will not miss much because in any case, what is on those slides is just points. It's not like diagrams or visuals that you would definitely need to have seen. So I think we can just move on. All right. Today's session is a continuation, as Dr. Walgembe mentioned. And last time we had got into the third portion of our series of conversations around how we can ensure that the theoretical framework that we are employing to orient ourselves to the topic or to the issue that we are studying has to have a direct, clear connection with the methodology that you are employing. There has to be resonance in order for you to really be able to have, serious and proper insights into the phenomenon that you are studying. And that's also the hallmark of, a PhD in terms of ensuring that there's coherence in all the aspects of your key aspects of your dissertation. And this particular segment, we kicked it off last week when we introduced ourselves to how do we make the connection between a theoretical framework and a particular method. And I mentioned that in this particular segment, we shall be looking at the connection as it relates to methodological traditions that reside in qualitative research. And I also mentioned that I will base my arguments or my issues on work we've done with students, PhD students, like many of you who are here. There were 5, and 4 have graduated, and 1 will most likely graduate the next graduation. And I had at the end there, when I joined, I think Professor Antai was concluding, and then Joseph indicated that if you want his work, you can also search him on YouTube. And I felt a bit excited that I should let the cat out of the basket to also inform you something that we are doing with my students, these same students that did the work that I'm basing on to present, that we're coming up with a series of YouTubes where I discuss with each of them in some kind of conversation around this question of connecting theory and method for each of them. And then we'll put it as on YouTube. So in the days ahead, we will also be, you will also be able to, get some insights from the people who did this, as well as, myself trying to see how do PhD students who have finished talk about their journey, and especially focusing on this particular aspect. So we will share that sometime, and we hope you will also be able to access those YouTubes when they come. For now, let's get back to what I have for you. So one of the case studies, I said there were 5, but I particularly, I think, talked about one when I wanted to make the connection between the theoretical lens and a particular methodological tradition, which was narrative inquiry last time. But 3 students employed that particular approach and connection. Today, we shall utilize two students' work in phenomenology, but I think I will highlight only one in the interest of time. So we mentioned that last time I remember we mentioned that in terms of matching theoretical lens, it's important that the choice you make about the theoretical framework you are going to employ in your study, it has a resonance with a particular methodology. In other words, the ideas behind a particular methodology in its view of the issues you are studying resonates with the views of your theoretical framework on that phenomenon that you're studying. Because when that connection is there, then it is easy in terms of how you identify who and what specifically you will study and how you will go about it. And that means that you will have to ensure that these two aspects of your work are connected and are consistent in their understanding of the critical issues of that phenomenon that you are studying. So this particular theoretical framework I mentioned then, that it's they employed a general theoretical framework that is referred to as a socio-cultural theoretical framework. And since most of them, actually all of them, although I have others that are not in psychology, were in psychology, this was also capturing a certain moment in the epistemic projects of psychology, in which more and more scholars are turning to qualitative traditions in trying to study psychological phenomena such as understanding the self, understanding the mind, and all these other personality, all these other concepts that psychologists engage in their studies. So that was the theoretical framework. Now, for each of the, and this was, of course, conceptualized, and we did a bit of work during our own workshops as PhD students. We used to have, not me as a person, but the students, but with me as their supervisor. We used to have discussions, seminars on theoretical framing, as well as methodological understanding of methodological tradition. So in those seminars, we took it upon ourselves to have a collective theoretical framework for ease and also for building a community of scholars in some way of thinking about particular phenomenon. So we took it upon ourselves to try and articulate some framework that can take care of all our different topics. So this particular one was handy, even though it comes in varieties, but at the end of the day, each study found a certain way, a certain version of this theoretical framework that would work for them. Last week, I mentioned that the one who used, one of the students who used the narrative was studying active learning and how that can lead to creative performance either in school or in workplaces. And so he really drew on a particular aspect of this theoretical framework, which goes into questions of historical, what they call the chart, the Calicio historical theoretical framework under this broad socio-cultural perspective. This particular person went ahead and utilized that framework to understand those issues. Now, today we are looking at another set of students that used that same framework the socio-cultural framework, to and employed it in phenomenological studies that were employing a phenomenological tradition. Now, this particular person, one of them that I'm going to use here for our conversation around phenomenology as a methodological framework for studying social, cultural, and all other forms of studies people employ. This particular study was focusing on children's experiences and perspectives on gender-based violence in primary schools. So this person was interested in really studying and in deep depth the question of gender-based violence, and especially among children in school, and very specifically in rural schools. So as a quick profile of this particular study, its topic was children's experiences and perspectives on gender-based violence in primary schools. And the phenomenon that the student wanted to critically study was gender-based violence. And the social group that this study focused on was children in school, of course, primary school actually. And then the setting were rural schools. And he actually studied rural schools in Eastern Uganda. Actually, he used case studies of 2 or 3 districts in Busoga. And he decided to use the socio-cultural framework, as I mentioned. And in any case, found this appropriate because its views of psychological processes such as mind and self as phenomena are socio-culturally constituted. So socio-cultural framework allowed from this standpoint, this particular study viewed socio-cultural framework as an important theoretical tool, because in its view of who you are studying, it views it in a socio-cultural manner. In other words, that even someone's sense of self and whatever happens in how they think or the mind are all socio-culturally constituted. In other words, it understands all these concepts in psychology as relational, and they emerge out of interactions with others in a socio-cultural context. So what children think or how they perceive and experience violence in schools, it is understood when you use this lens, it is understood as something that is emerging out of interactions, and it is relational within a particular socio-cultural context. That means in order for this particular PhD student to really comprehend and have depth in issues of gender-based violence, they needed a framework that allows them to take on board those socio-cultural contextual issues. So a socio-cultural perspective really, in a sense, allows for the researcher to focus on the subject, to focus on the researched as the subject matter, and their subjectivity is very central. So this framework really brings out the socio-cultural, the political, the economic, and the relational dimensions of human existence and experience. And it brings it to the foreground in ways that, according to what this student discovered, or what as a group they really discovered and we found about this framework, is that it allows for those elements within a person's interactions and experiences. They can be able to be foregrounded in ways that other approaches in psychology, such as behaviorism and all these others that really take on a positivistic stance, cannot. So this theoretical lens, according to this to the student, provided them with a framework for theorizing children's voices. Again, this was another important plus about the theoretical lens and confidence in the theoretical lens, given that his immersion in the literature around the issues of children violence had been that most of the studies really did not give significant voice to the student. I mean, to the persons being researched. And here, this person is very interested in children and allowing children's voice to be clearly out there and be a basis of more knowledge about, you know, what they are going through. So the question of voice had been muted because the researchers, or at least in the literature that he had familiarized himself with, the voice of the children had been taken over by the researchers. And so there was a lot of missed opportunity to get down deep to what these people are experiencing and how they are perceiving, you know, those experiences, or the violence that is based on their gender immersion in a very socio-cultural setting. So this case study overcame some of the problems associated with, you know, those shallow conceptions of voice, as I've just mentioned, and it set out to really propose a deeper conception of children's voice, which is rooted in some kind of in a view that allows children to have agency, to speak from their own standpoint as children, not as children spoken about, but children speaking about the phenomenon themselves, not their experiences being spoken about in conferences and so on, but by the researchers, without having a bit of what is original from them. So the study applied an interpretive phenomenological analysis to listen to children's voices in ways that helped foster respectful responses to their experiences and concerns, and at the same time, recognizing their agency. So as I mentioned, this was crucial. First of all, it allowed the researcher to get down and sort of give up a bit of their own authority as the ones who know the subject, and rather allow to be educated or allow to be given more insights and to even understand the situatedness of this question of violence in schools. And at a particular time that was also difficult because this was during COVID. This study was conducted, the fieldwork, part of the fieldwork of this study, in fact, almost all of it was studied during times of lockdown and all other experiences of COVID, added to the other already difficult situations that children go through when they are in school. Given the open-ended nature of, you know, the theoretical lens in terms of allowing for a more relational approach to who you are studying, and also allowing for the researcher to not have so much preconceptions about the study context, in which, in this case, for this particular study, the context, first of all, being a rural school setting, but also with a lot of other social cultural realities in a school setting. Remember, school setting sets up certain expectations, social norms, and so on about how the children conduct themselves around each other and around authorities and around the community as well. So a community was also part of the context, the community within which the school is located, but also the community within which these children go back to outside or after school. These are children who would face bullying, children who would face all these other forms of, teasing and stuff like that. And these are children of below 10 that this person interacted with. So that is how in the first part, this particular study tried to understand how the lens will be relevant in this particular area of study, theoretically. Now, the next aspect of this conversation is now to see how those elements of the lens were now put to use in terms of how the study was designed and how the study was conducted. And that's when this particular person looked at the value and role that a phenomenological kind of study, given that his interest was on lived experiences of children and how those lived experiences give these children a particular view of the violence that was being meted to them. Then a phenomenological approach, specifically what is called interpretive phenomenological analysis, was the methodological tool that came close to, came close to what was practical and resonant with the theoretical issues we have just talked about. So the choice of that particular methodological tool was found to be appropriate, given that in psychology, interpretive phenomenological analysis was also something that the literature indicated that it had been also adopted as some kind of response or a reaction, really. It's one of those methodological traditions that were like emerging as part of the implications of, the dissatisfaction with the experimental or the laboratory, predominantly laboratory or experimental paradigm that so dominates in ways psychologists do research about virtually anything. So IPA comes to this discipline as some form of reaction against the conceptualization of a person within experimental and laboratory paradigm. And those experimental approaches or views of how to conduct research have certain assumptions about the person, and then also have limitations in how much context about this person, and therefore how that context is influencing the psychological processes the person needs to study. Normally, there's limitation in how those paradigms, the experimental approaches, can do a good job in terms of capturing those contextual issues, such as the lived realities. Remember here, the lived realities for this particular study were to do with understanding children experiences of violence. And in rural settings, these are daily things. There's violence at home already, but also when they go to school, it's still another form of violence that they find they are bullying, that teachers also get involved in some cases and stuff like that. So finding a methodological tool like this one was definitely a plus, given that when you look at its, its views on the subject of study resonate with the views of the theoretical lens. So this IPA, which is interpretive phenomenological analysis, was developed really to broaden psychology's conceptualization of what the person is and how research on this person is to be conducted, which was a good development. And now, increasingly, initially, the studies had been a little bit minuscule, especially in our context, but increasingly now we are starting to find publications that kind of take on this tradition more intentionally as part of the way to approach understanding human experiences, lived experiences. So IPA's theoretical commitments are rooted, as I mentioned, are rooted in phenomenology, which provides deep insights into how participants or into how human beings make sense of their personal and social world. So phenomenology is very useful if you are really going to capture those kind of things. And it is usually concerned with questions of considerable importance to the person or to the participant or to the individual, either on an ongoing basis or at that particular critical juncture when you have designed or when you have decided to conduct the study. So again, those kind of issues or those elements about this methodological approach, again, just were the right things to find about this tradition, to convince the student that this would be an appropriate tool, with which to really study the lived experiences of children, especially if you are going to foreground their voices, or if you are going to ensure that whatever you come out with is going to have come from critical and deep analysis of their lived experiences, so that whatever perspectives they hold about how this violence is meted to them, and who does it, and why it happens the way it does, this methodological tool has the right sort of frame of thinking about the participant. So with this methodological tool, careful, in-depth, holistic analysis of individual accounts are significant experiences when you study the student, when you study the participants. It takes them through, or it allows for you to move along with the participants in trying to appreciate the kind of significant experiences or events that these people are going through, to the point that as you go through the study itself, it's an experience that impacts on personal and social identity. And we saw that even with this particular study of children's experience, because the accounts they give and how they give them, they really give you a sense of, students deciding to sort of identify more with particular ways of being either a girl or being a boy and stuff like that. So that's again the kind of issues that you find when you decide to pay attention to a particular methodological tradition, its foundational issues and understandings of the phenomenon and the researched object, or in this case, the researched subject, since we are dealing with human beings here, and how those views and versions of understanding of the researched, how they also resonate with the theoretical tool, which we again also saw. It has a version of how to view this subject or the researched almost in similar ways. So the connection becomes sensible, or the choice of employing a particular methodological tradition called IPA in a socioculturally framed study, how it makes sense. Now let's go more a bit into how this case study then went about the practical issues in the field. Now, as I've said, theoretical lens cleared in terms of what it is about and what it can allow one to do in a particular frame of study framework, and how that is connected to a particular methodological tradition, here, phenomenology, and its resonances with the lens. Now, how did this particular connection pan out in the field? As we've said, IPA is an inductive approach. In other words, it's an approach that is almost taken as bottom up rather than top down. It allows for the researcher to be informed by what they find from the researched, or from the field, or from the environment of study, rather than you going with the preconceptions as a researcher of what you are going to expect these people to, how they are going to view, for instance, in this case, how they view violence is meted out to them. So a study like this does not definitely test hypotheses, and therefore minimizes and avoids, starting with prior assumptions. And that's also what this person did, to minimize going to the field with these preconceptions of what they expected to find once they got down to talk with, or to get insights or listen to the children about violence in schools, and also the other surrounding informants that would be found relevant. So IPA here is the short for interpretive phenomenological analysis. Is about hearing voices of participants from across the sociocultural spectrum. So as a methodological tool, it's already right for hearing or listening to people, especially whose voice has been, not so much given prominence. So already it's showing how useful it is. So in this study, the participants were recruited on the basis that they could understand how they will be involved in a research process, which was about listening to them and the sense they make about the forms of violence that they could be experiencing. They also were supposed to consent, although that was sometimes given via other people or other minders, because some of them were younger than the others. They were engaged with the interviewer in interviews, and they also were expected to show willingness and to express their experiences and opinions freely. So obviously in the field that also called for a bit of skills in how to ensure that you provide an environment of interaction with these students and these children that would allow for them to really feel free and express their experiences and opinions. And this was important. Otherwise, it wouldn't make sense when you are the one just extracting stories, or you are the one who is really leading them. So the approach also allows for a one-to-one aid in order to aid the interviewer to work with the respondent. In this case, it was allowing this the researcher, the PhD candidate, to work with the children in a flexible, collaborative manner, and it allowed him to really identify and interpret the relevant meanings that make sense, that he used to make sense of the research topic. So phenomenological analysis, or IPA in short, is developed around substantial verbatim excerpts from the data. So meaning that it's important for a researcher to ensure that they allow for the respondent to be as original and to feel free and speak from what their heart as much as possible, free-flowing narratives to come through. So this, of course, when you allow for that, then it means that even in the final work that you will be writing up, your work is going to have a lot to be based on a lot of verbatim excerpts from the data. So because you want the voice or the voice of the participants to be understood from their own standpoint. So a lot of them, in fact, in some of the literature, you'll find that the dissertation or the article may have as many as 40 or even 60 verbatim excerpts included in the dissertation. So meaning that those are original texts as they came from those who were included in the study. So this illustrates how this particular methodology, how it is committed to prioritizing the participant's voice. Very important, because the readers of the work that then gets published, if they already are reading it with an understanding that's a phenomenological piece, they should be able to find that a lot in their work. They should feel the participant's voice there, not the voice of the one who is writing up the work, because sometimes that's the challenge that researchers in these qualitative traditions struggle with. Strike the balance of the need to allow voice to flow in the work and the need to also tell the broader story of the topic, you as the researcher. So it's a balancing act that can be guided by some of these unique distinctions between the particular qualitative theory, qualitative methodologies that you are using. But for this particular one, verbatim excerpts are so critical because it is about lived experiences. And what that means is that participants' voice is crucial to actually come through the written up work. So in terms of procedures, the procedures that this kind of approach utilizes are really inductive. Inductive in the sense that, you know, you get to the field, or you get to the participants, and you learn more. And as you learn more, you build your progress in where to go next. If you finish with one participant, where do you go next? But the where next is dictated by where you're from. And it is an iterative approach or method, in the sense that it's sort of back and forth. You go in front, but you can also go behind to get more insights, or to be more clear whether you are not generalizing when, you know, there are specific differences. So it is iterative, back and forth, until you really are, you know, convinced that you now have been able to appreciate the distinctions that the different sets of data, or the different sets of insights that are coming from the participant stories are unique, and you cannot get any more. So procedures are inductive and iterative, and they are intended to help the researcher develop an initial insider's perspective on the topic. Now here there are two important points to take about to make about a phenomenological study that is using this approach, the interpretive phenomenological analysis. That while you are foregrounding participants' voices, when it comes to analyzing all, you know, now putting together all the work and into some kind of write-up, then how you are going to analyze it so that, one, you still maintain the voice of the participants. There are two positions that are highlighted in phenomenological analysis that the researcher may end up undertaking, or taking up. The first position is that you act like you want to kind of be able to identify with the inside of the one who is giving these narratives, or who is giving this, the one who has been interviewed, or the ones who have been who have told the story. So, because the story is not yours, but the one who told the story is not the one writing up the dissertation. So, if you're going to be able to make sense of it in order for you to make a broader argument about the topic, but while still giving prominence to the participant's voice, the first rule of thumb for IPA, interpretive phenomenological analysis, is taking the position of a phenomenological insider position. So what does this mean? It simply means that you, the researcher, you begin by hearing out, or by listening out to those participants' stories, and you prioritize their worldview. In other words, don't put much of your own view of reality, or the way you view the world. Because, like, for instance, this particular candidate, or this particular PhD student, as I mentioned, the focus of the work was on violence, gender-based, but for children. So the sense they make, or from how they are telling the story about the violence, the first thing as an insider you want to make sure you do is to imagine you are like this child. So you try to appreciate that story from that child's standpoint, because some of the things that they will say, for you who is already an adult, you might want to put your worldview and then minimize their value to the story. Once you do that, or once you fail to take the position of this child or the one who is researched, already you are failing the first position. And so you are not going to be able to project the voice of the person. And so there's going to be a bit of missed opportunity again to ensure that the participant's worldview is at the core of the account that is being given about gender-based violence. Second, once you've done that, then of course you start coming up with, something that you are going to be sharing out, or that you are going to write up as what is emerging out of your study. But that's just step one. And I mentioned that there are 2 steps or 2 positions that you need to adopt while making sense of what has come from all these accounts of children's, or these accounts of participants' lived experiences. The second position you need to take is now, so you appreciate the accounts or the children's accounts of violence as a phenomenological insider, meaning that you put down yourself as a researcher to the position of the child, or the position now here, the position now here of a child, the position of the one who is giving the account. And you therefore remove your own preconceptions as much as possible. Of course, it's impossible to remove all of them. And that's why we will talk about your role later. But that's the first thing, so that you appreciate it and make sense of it from that standpoint, not your own preconceptions. Then secondly, you then need to, because you are the one going to give this account eventually, you then need to also get to the level of an interpreter. In other words, you are taking a different position from the phenomenological insider to an interpretive outsider. Meaning that now that you have understood the child's story from their own standpoint, but you want to make sense of that experience within a broader framework, maybe of the others who you have already listened to and you have made sense of the same way. Like in this case, this particular study did use the number of participants, and so it means that the study employed this position to very many participants in order to be able to now appreciate. So it then meant that in order to be able to now put a broader lens to those lived accounts of the different children, you need to adopt the second position, the second level position, which is an interpretive outsider, which you do to all the information you've got from the participants. Now, practically, let me just give you a bit of more data about this particular study and how then we can make sense of the other aspects I want to talk about. So this study, the phenomenological study, it drew on particular methods of data collection. Some of them were actually very unique. In fact, it's one of those things that the student has actually written up has written an article I think it's under review. And part of the strength that this particular student is using is some of the techniques for collecting data collection, which are a bit novel and so on. So he used draw and talk techniques. In other words, one of the things that he used to collect that information was to ask children to make drawings. But as they were making drawings, those drawings, they were trying to project the kind of things about violence that they find in their environment, but by drawing either in pictures or talking about the pictures. So they would draw and then they would be asked to talk about the picture. So in doing that, the student is able to get insights from both how they perceive that violence, but also how they live that violence through how they are talking about it. So it captured voices of such children, 20 primary school pupils. And then it also conducted 4 focus group discussions. Then to get more insights from boys and girls. So you can see you are getting data from all those kind of methods and that range of depth of text and data. And we are saying that once you get it, you need to now make sense of it. So these methodologies that this student used were, as I mentioned, very innovative in a sense, like the use of draw and talk techniques. These were very child-friendly for modes of data collection. Again, a unique aspect that is essential if you are going to be able to get people to really come out clearly on their lived experiences. So the PhD candidate went through the information that came from those 20 children, as well as the FGDs, focus group discussions, and initially positioned themselves as a phenomenological insider by trying to get verbatim texts that represented those each of those children's accounts of the lived experiences, as well as the ones that came from the focus group discussion. Then the later level of analysis of that work was to take the interpretive outsider's position, where now the researcher, the doctoral candidate, attempted to make sense of those experiences and concerns and illuminate them in a way that answers his particular research questions, which now meant that he had to put a bit of a more generalizing lens in where possible, not to force, but where possible, in order to come up with, categories of accounts that could be articulated as a representative of a particular voice regarding the positives and negatives of their experiences. And as he did that, again, the other important rule in analysis and also generally in the way to report work of this kind was the question of transparency. Transparency here that I like to talk about, transparency and reflexivity, being reflexive. So 2 requirements. If you are going to provide good account that foregrounds participants' voices in this kind of studies, there are 2 important issues, criteria for the researcher and your role and how you actually help the readers appreciate your role. Those requirements are 2. The first one is about transparency, and the second one is about being reflexive, which is called reflexivity. What does transparency mean? transparency is really to do with ensuring that you report you report every aspect of the decisions that were made, right from the choice of lens, methodology, and methods, and procedures, and analysis. All of them, you got to be transparent, such that we can appreciate how the final accounts, as written up or as published in the work that is being published, it is clear to see how much voice has not been has been maintained or has been foregrounded, and also how much has been affected by the role of the researcher. So that's the issue of transparency, and this is an important requirement, and obviously the student or the PhD candidate tried as much as possible, including how he was able to prompt some of the children when they kind of were not able to articulate some concepts, given that he also was a native of the area where he did the study. He would be able to kind of, I think, appreciate some of the cultural connotations of some of the issues the children were saying, so that he could be more clear about what he was getting from these children. Not to give them the concept, but to simply check or bounce off what the child is struggling to articulate, if it was what he understood from that cultural context. So transparency was important, as well as clearly outlining how the researcher actually contributed to what came through at the end of the work. So these are some of the key aspects of how an IPA type of project can be used when you really want to ensure that, one, participants are respected, but also participants are able to feel free and engage with you, the researcher, in a way that they are able to express their experiences and provide opinions about what you are studying, and without actually you volunteering what they needed to say, or just giving them a template of what you expect them to say. Yeah, so that's I think quickly what this student did in terms of how he went about employing a particular methodological tool that had resonance with a particular theoretical framework, and what kind of insights can come from that kind of design. And I can say that given those sort of innovative approaches, child-friendly methodologies that of data collection that this particular study employed, the person was able to come up with some insights about how the community, for instance, community here included the school, but also the wider village or the community within which the school was, and also within which the children live. They found positives about the community in terms of what the children drew or what the children talked about, in terms of what the role and contribution, or in terms of context to gender-based violence, but also there were negatives. So, for instance, the children appreciated the community in terms of, being a source of resources for them as children within the community. because they also could be part of the policies that guided the school. They contributed, and so they saw that those were good things. But at the same time, they also found that the children also brought out issues to do with community members contributing to destructive school and violent school environments. So these are also things that the candidate was able to decipher from those children's pictures, stories, which then he has been able to use in the dissertation, but again is also using to really engage with the community. Partly, that is also another positive about this particular methodology, is that it can also go beyond just the intellectual to also the practical and application. So the person has been actually moving around some radio stations, TV shows. He's been engaged in trying to share, but also talk around policy environment for dealing with gender-based violence in schools. So putting it together, really, now that we've seen how two dissertation works have employed particular methodological traditions that resonate with particular theoretical frameworks, I think in a sense we've got a taste of how you can be able to rigorously engage your theories in your work and methodology in your work in a way that is more illuminating and sometimes even more insightful and creative at the same time. And then you get insights. And also the potential for you as a researcher to actually build theory from the bottom, rather than all the time, like in these cases, these two people's cases that I've discussed, where it had always been that their disciplines sort of always wanted them or expects them to sort of start with preconceived ideas and then test them out and then sort of just confirm theory. Here we see now possibilities of wider applications of interpretive modes of doing research, which can allow for the researcher to engage with knowledge from a perspective of building new theories, and rather than testing already applied theories. Remember, here I'm using theories more broadly, in the sense that there are theories that are broader, which helps you to orient yourself in the broader frame of thinking about what you're studying. But there are also the discipline-specific theories, which are more to do with the content of what you are studying. So you can be able to be, you can be able now to sort of start thinking about building a new theoretical insight, especially in terms of the content, from this kind of ways of proceeding, like these two students have done. Yeah, so what all of these studies and research questions really have in common, if I look at all these dissertations that these people are doing, was that they really, all of them, and that's why a particular theoretical framework was possible, they were all interested in detailed exploration of personal and social experiences of their participants. So whether it was this particular one who was interested in the lived experiences of school-going children about gender-based violence, or it was the one who investigated the question of active learning, in university environments and workplaces, or the one who interrogated the mindset question in a narrative framework, or the one who interrogated the academic work and the changing environment of academic work. All of them have had a common sort of interest that allowed for them to be able to approach their work with a particular theoretical frame, even though the specific areas of focus then meant that they could employ diverse methodological traditions. And so the value of thinking about theories from those many levels is definitely evident here. If you look at theories from the micro aspect alone, where you are just so interested in the content-specific theories, then you are going to be limited in the possibility of building theories, but also you are going to be limited in the appreciation of the broader frames of thinking about society and some of the human experiences related to the work you are studying. So I think I would like to stop it there. I hope these two examples, but coming from the 5 students that I supervised, have given us a sense of the value of being clear and articulate about a theoretical framework. And in fact, the distinction between a theoretical framework and conceptual frameworks, and that it is what you go for is the theoretical framework. Because then once you are clear with the theoretical framework, then the particular concepts that you want to go for become more clearer, and it is more easier to actually identify them consistent with a particular theoretical frame of thinking. And so the implication methodologically is also almost automatic, like we've seen there, because the issues that resonate with that theoretical lens have to also resonate with a particular methodological form of thinking. So thank you so much for listening to me. I want to stop it here and maybe give it back to the moderator for any few questions and answers. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you very much, Professor Julius Chikoma. Ladies and gentlemen, allow me really appreciate Professor for bringing out those very practical case studies on phenomenological approach towards qualitative research. And we have a few questions here and there. Professor, can I first give you these ones before actually we take up the hands? There is a question on how does phenomenological approach link to grounded theory, and what could be the core differences in here? The second question is on you provide broader distinction between provide a detailed distinction between the broader theory and the specific theory in a phenomenological study. And then the last one, this approach seems to be working towards theory building, and the person who is working towards theory building is regarded to enter into research with an open mind. Which theories does he or she needs then to review at the beginning, especially in the literature review and writing or putting together materials? I don't know whether, Professor, those 3 questions are clear. You can begin with those that I have in here, before we go to the hands. Thank you.
Thank you very much for those questions. I hope I've understood them. They kind of, all of them seem to be interlinked, like the last one. If I start with the last one, if indeed one is aiming at building theory, then is there a point in reviewing literature that is about theory? Okay, I think that's sort of what I understand. In other words, what do I need to start with theories if I'm any form of theoretical review if I'm interested in building a theory? As I mentioned, the first important point about theoretical framework for me is that we need to understand it as some kind of orientation to what we want to study. It's a broad orientation to what we want to study. Anything you want to study, you will not study it without some kind of orientation. It's impossible. So, and that's why I said that it's a good way of, it's a good practice to understand that their theory can come in levels, micro, macro, meta, and so on. So even when it is about theoretical contribution that you are going to do, I mean, theoretical building that you want to do, somehow you will have to read around broadly in order to get some kind of bearing about a particular phenomenon, because it's almost impossible for you to say that this has never been studied. I know that's the quick way that positivist orientation is, or sort of give the impression about, but there has to be somewhere where there is a broad frame of thinking that exists, or that is kind of giving you some ideas of why even that topic should be what you want to study. So that is already some kind of theoretical framing. So you likely will start with broad theoretical framing, even if you are going to, if your interest is to build theories. And that's why in these particular studies I've given you, all of them, they went for a more broad framework, which is in a sense, it's a meta theoretical frame. So it's a theory that allows you to theorize about other issues. It's a theory of theories in a sense, the meta theories. That way, you are able to now be able to go down and see what is possible. So when your interest is theory building, I think start broadly with theoretical frameworks that are of a macro nature, that are more broad brush. They will give you a sense of the possibilities that the other micro theories will not, because they will restrict you so much that then you will not be able to even start thinking of building a theory. You will only have to test them. There was also a question on the connection, or what's the distinction between the phenomenological theory or phenomenological method. What is the distinction between a phenomenological method and a grounded theory? Now, grounded theory is not the same as phenomenology or interpretive phenomenological analysis. In a number of senses, because grounded theory simply suggests that you allow the participants to give the theory or to give you the theoretical framework. Phenomenological analysis says lived experience. Those are two different things. Lived experience means that you just want people to just give you the reality as they sort of, everything is possible at that point, as long as it is capturing what they are living through. It's a particular concern. Grounded theory is saying that whatever you can find, you put it together and then you form that into some kind of theory. What it doesn't do, or what doesn't help identify clearly, is that somehow it's also based on some kind of theory. Because how will you be able to make sense of the patterns? Because it uses patterns, that patterns will emerge from data. Those patterns definitely have to have some way of theory. But grounded theory simply says that, you will go through you get work from, get whatever you can get from the field, be it documents, be it from people telling you, and so on. It's so open-ended in its nature also. But at the same time, it says that you are going to identify patterns from the data itself. Now here, the phenomenological analysis is saying that you give the story of the person. First, reduce yourself to the person so that you give the story as they give it. But after some time, you have to actually orient that story to your question. Grounded theory doesn't say that. Grounded theory simply says patterns will emerge, and those emerging patterns will continue to be the basis of a theory that you develop. So there are some connections, but there are some distinctions. And the other thing about grounded theory that has emerged in more recent in more recent analysis of it as a theory or a methodology, is that at the end of the day, grounded theory really is also socially constructed, in the sense that it depends on the researcher's position, where the researcher is positioned, even though grounded theory doesn't want to say that the researcher contributed, but actually the researcher contributes, because they have a certain standpoint that is guiding them to say that even these patterns make sense. So phenomenology does not make those pretenses. Phenomenology simply suggests that you give voice and let that voice be put together in a way that will now illuminate the experience. Grounded theory says, no, you are going to construct the theory from what you get from the field. Let the field work give you the concepts and so on. They seem to be saying the same thing, but very different directions it takes you once you get into the field. I think those are the quick things. Have I left out another one? I think there was something about link. There was something about building from down. Ahmed, is there any other issue I left out?
Professor, you have ably captured them.
Okay.
You have ably captured them. Maybe if there is another concern, maybe, Professor, the issue of broader theory versus actually began with that. It was captured.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah, you did. Members, another comment, please share in the chat. Peace is saying, thank you very much. What is the difference between a proposition and a hypothesis in qualitative research? Peace wanted more highlights about proposition and hypothesis. And then Asimo Florence is also saying, give us more insights on a number of respondents in a phenomenological type of approach.
There are people speaking in the background. I don't think I've got to that second point.
Manage, I think they have managed that person. There is a question. The first one is from Peace. Peace is saying the difference between preposition and hypothesis in qualitative research. Will you need hypothesis in qualitative research? That is Peace. 2, Florence. Florence is saying, how long or how many respondents should one engage in a phenomenological type of study? Is it talking about sampling here? If you're going to sample, how many are you going to sample? Then we have Deborah. Deborah is saying, would you kindly go through once more the difference between a theory and a model? Once more, the difference between a theory and a model. Then Liz. Okay, Liz is saying that, thank you very much. We normally get confused. I think Professor Far, okay, Hosai, this is from Zimbabwe, I think. Gozai is saying, Prof, wonderful insights on theory building and theory testing. You can please comment further on that. Thank you very much. We can actually take those 4 and then we can proceed. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Proposition, I think that was Peace. Propositions versus hypothesis in qualitative research. I think really this is something that is characteristic of people who are doing, are following what we call positivist kind of research, which means that they are not paradigmatically interpretive. They are not paradigmatically interpretive, but they are utilizing qualitative data. So that means that they still want to sort of test something, or they use the elements of qualitative to test some kind of proposition or some kind of hypothesis. This normally comes through when you look at people who are using content analysis, and also people who are biased by a very popular book in dealing with handling qualitative data by Miles and Huberman. All those are still modes of research that employs methods of qualitative research, but they don't really follow the methodological traditions in the qualitative methodological traditions, as I have mentioned, the other ones. Narrative inquiry, phenomenology, ethnography, those very, very characteristic modes of qualitative tradition. These ones use, they use maybe grounded theory also, although I said that you better read around the debates around grounded theory so that you can get a sense of its distinction with the other other methodological traditions with a longer history in qualitative research. Grounded theory has a relatively shorter history, and no wonder it is sort of a shoot off of, you know, people who are still positively minded, but then would like to open up to the fact that, you know, absolute truth is not so easy, and so they take a moderate, a more critical realist approach to positivism. I need to say that because sometimes when people are not steeped in these kind of modes of thinking, they tend to bring the logic of qualitative understanding or qualitative philosophy, quantitative philosophies, in making sense of how to do research in a qualitative sense. That's where those possibilities of coming up with a hypothesis or a proposition come from. They also exist in qualitative research, but you need to know how to use them in order to actually make a good epistemological and ontological philosophical argument of your work. So the guide there would be using content analysis, which is also part of what grounded theory uses, because it doesn't have its own depth in terms of how it can, you know, analyze work apart from using, again, positivist modes of analysis. Sample, how many? Well, in phenomenology, they don't limit, but you, given the example I've given of this particular student, I think he used 20. 20 is not small, but 20 is also not much. So we have seen even others that are more than that, especially given that you use FGDs. The possibility of having a sample that is higher is also there, because somehow someone might say that, but qualitative research is not known for a big number. But again, you have to be more clear. You don't take it as just a, something there constant. Yes, the N is not the N is not dictated by a formula like we have in quantitative. Here, N, or the sample, is more based on the theoretical interest of a particular methodology. Like in this particular one, if you are going to make sense of lived experiences, you want to listen to as many that can give you insights. And if you can have 20 and you are still getting some more insights, you go. But if you have 10 and whatever else comes, you don't get anything, that's where you stop. So N is not really, there's no formula for it. But the possibility of many is there. It just depends on the modes that you have employed to collect what kind of data that is relevant in your study. Theory model distinction. I think theory is broad and more abstract. Model is concrete. It is those elements of the theory that you pick to study in a particular way. They are connected, the concepts now they are connected. And then when they connect in a particular way to help you study a particular issue, that becomes a model. It is very specific to a particular dissertation or a particular research project. Because it is using particular concepts out of the theory, out of the various possible concepts the theory gives. You may decide to pick particular connections, conceptual connections, and the way they connect to give you a response or an answer or address a particular question. Then you say that's the model for addressing that question. So a model is more concrete. The theory is more abstract because it is giving you a broader orientation to how you can engage issues in a particular area of study. Finally, again, say more about theory building, theory testing. I think I've done that even with the first question. Theory building is you are not going with the presuppositions, theoretical presuppositions in the beginning of your work, but you're allowing yourself to have a broader theoretical framework that will allow you to come up with any new thinking about a particular area. And that new thinking can become the basis for you developing a new theory around these issues. Just like I mentioned, this study, the student now is starting to theorize differently about the forms of gender-based violence, where the issue is the contributions of community. While others theories would limit you to now focusing on, the actors, particular actors, like in school, you will say maybe if it is gender-based, the boys beating girls, the teachers and stuff. Now this study is giving you a new form of thinking about violence that brings in the role of community. So that's the essence of, and so he goes on to start giving some idea of theory in a content area, which is now built from down up. So that is different from theory testing, because theory testing would have then been that this person started with a particular theory, took it through the different ways you carry out, theory testing studies, like you have a hypothesis, you have predetermined ideas you want to test out on children, you get the answers, and then you either agree or you validate that theory, or you disapprove some of the aspects that are coming from your study. So I think generally what I'm picking from these conversations or these questions, I think the issue of theory building, theory testing, we need to continue to engage clearly and be articulate about it. But for me, it will be much more better appreciated if we also know the role that broader theoretical levels play in a dissertation. Like I mentioned, the broader levels of theory and how they allow you to orient differently than if you go with just the micro levels of theory. The other issue that is coming through from here is, I think, unfortunately, I did not have time, or this particular case studies I used did not take up grounded theory. We were alive to it. I particularly one time I used it, but I departed and I moved on from grounded theory because I think that it was not resonant with many things that I thought were giving me more insights. Much of it, I thought that it was still steeped in very positivistic versions of reality and experiences, to the point that then it was limiting some of the insights that I wanted from the kind of studies. And the same for these kind of students whose work I've shared here. They did not find it useful as a tradition, even though it is also an open-ended mode of approaching studies, but its assumptions do not resonate with the kind of issues these people wanted. Like I've said, the one on children's experiences could not take on grounded theory because there are some restrictions grounded theory would give you in how to go about those experiences, and would obviously not be able to capture the innovativeness that this particular phenomenological study allowed. The one for mindset, similarly, it would have placed restrictions given that its assumptions are a bit different, and so on and so forth. But maybe there would be it will be a good thing just to have a special one time. I am not dictating when that can be. Some other time, the colleagues can think of that, but some other time to just devote a session on grounded theory, because I think there is a lot of misconception about what it is, its theoretical framing, its assumptions, and its possibilities. It is already marketed as if once you are doing qualitative, you are doing grounded theory, which is a mistake. So maybe there will be an important need to just have a session on grounded theory, because there are many limitations that people don't really clearly understand about grounded theory. And there are many assumptions they use to make it look like it's applicable to any qualitative type of study. Back to you, Ahmed. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Professor Chikoma for that very elaborate discussion. I think I agree with you. I actually agree with you on the thinking of grounded theory and its application in qualitative research. We need a special session on it because a number of people are opening up now to qualitative research.
Yes, and what I would suggest, if that is taken on board, unlike these ones where we are having people, I think, come and share experiences, my suggestion would be to actually have some kind of debate. Have people who are sold into it, well, that's not the right word to use, but anyway, people who use it and really have sufficient knowledge of what it is about. And then have also people who know it, but can make a good critique of it, so that you have a balanced view of what it is about. Otherwise, to me, the way it is sold as if it is the replacement for any form of qualitative is very worrying. And actually, it stifles theoretical thinking.
Okay, Prof, we're going to look into that, and I think we shall get that balanced members to come and debate, a balanced debate of grounded theory. Prof, the last one before we come in to close, I would request if Dr. Msingus is on, we'll be able to give us a closing word. But before you come into that, the issue, there is a question from Unia on the concept of reflexivity as a requirement under IPA.
Okay.
We'll recap on that as the last question we can take today. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. Very important and very useful question. Actually, reflexivity is a general criteria as well that goes through most of these qualitative methodologies. Ideally, it is about being modest about the claims you are making in terms of your study and your role in those claims. Because many times we find people making so many claims as if, these things just turned out the way they did. They had no role as researchers in how this whole thing came about or how it ended up being the way it is. So you as a researcher, you need to be able to be reflective and bring out, what are some of those things about you that could have been part of how this work has come through. I will give you two examples. I'll give you an example from this study that I used here. The researcher who did this study eventually also gave two aspects of his involvement in this work. One, in terms of motivation. The topic resonates with his own childhood. There are things about his childhood that I think he was still looking for answers. And the way he could get answers was to undertake the study. And along the way, of course, this led to many other things that he never expected that they would be like that. But already that shows you how you can reflect on your involvement in the study, including how you ended up wanting to study it the way you studied it. But also when you carry it out, you have to again be able to bring out what are those parts about you that made the certain turns possible and other turns not possible. Like I mentioned, that being part of the community where the study was conducted and him being able to appreciate some of the cultural nuances that are a part of some of the way people speak about some concepts of violence, be they girls, be they boys, was something that he also reflected upon. Because him being a boy who grew up in those contexts, there's a way he could actually relate with certain phrases children were using which then had some cultural nuances that he could bring out because he was a cultural insider. So he had to be reflective on that, so that it did, because the original accounts were a bit not easy to decipher if you did not have this interpreter who is the researcher, who was also part of the cultural community. So he reflected on that and how some of these particular accounts turned out as a result of that involvement. And other things about gender, just like also I want to add my own experiences when I was undertaking a dissertation study, and part of my participants were women. And much of what I was interested in had a lot of gender or feminist analysis that I used to make sense of entrepreneurs who are, who are also making it big in the business. And when I sat with, I think it was one which still remains memorable, was when I was doing an interview with one of these, she was one of the first ones to have a publishing house here. And so I had an interview with her, and as we went through the interview, there would be parts in those the interview where the person can say, "You men, what you do. You see, she was making so many assumptions about men because I was a man interviewing her, and so how I replied back and how I contributed to now how we could continue with her giving more insights about that issue. I had to bring it out, and also I had to I had to help the readers to appreciate how that could only be possible by me trying to help her make sense of a man's world when I'm actually talking about women's issues. You see. So those kind of things are what constitutes reflexivity in a dissertation, and they're essential because they are part of what creates the final output. Thank you.
Thank you very
Ahmed,
much.
back to you.
Thank you very much, Professor Julius Chikoma. Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to really appreciate Professor Chikoma for the work he has done over time in support of the students' community to progress at the PhD level. We believe that his contribution is recognized out there, and we pray that the Almighty give him the best out of it. We are coming to the end of this, ladies and gentlemen, and I would like to really appreciate all of you for being patient. Those who joined at 3 a.m. up to this moment, people are still online and very active. It's kind of a commitment towards the program. I had requested my senior colleague, Dr. Dennis Musenguzi, to come and give us a closing remarks and a prayer. I hope Dr. Musenguzi is still online. Dr. Musenguzi can do that for us.
Oh, thank you so much, Dr. Walugembe, for inviting me in to give a closing word. I have to join you in thanking Professor Julius Chikoma, who has taken us through the link between phenomenology research and theories. And for the past weeks that he and Professor Laura have, given us a break on this research journey that we undertake every Sunday in the morning, which admittedly is good, not only for the PhD students, but even us, the so-called senior colleagues. There is a lot that we learn through sharing. It is kind of peer capacity, and we learn so many things. And I like the way, Professor freely and eloquently talks about these phenomenology issues and theories and research. And more importantly, when he links it with the lived experiences of the researchers that he has conducted or he has supervised and how students have used them. I'm sure those insights and experiences go a long way, in providing additional insights, beyond the technical knowledge of phenomenology, but also into practical experiences on how to apply it. Indeed, he has clearly explained phenomenology is a qualitative approach, as he elaborately explained. At a philosophical level, it was actually a resistance of against the quantitative approach, because in quantitative research, scholars are looking at natural phenomena and objects in space and time. And social scientists, the classical social scientists, wanted to study human beings in the same way we study physical objects. In management, scholars wanted to condition human beings to operate like machines. In sociology, scholars wanted human beings to be studied in the same way we study the physical reality. But it was the phenomenological scholars who came and said, no, the human phenomenon is slightly different from the physical phenomenon. And phenomenologists are saying, in a human being, there is something imponderable, there is something immeasurable, there is something unrepeatable that you cannot just quantify. The inwardness that makes a human being quite elusive, that you cannot study a human being the same way you would study a seed or you would study a machine. And therefore they came with, later on, the methodological scholars, basing on the phenomenology philosophy, came with these interesting approaches that Professor Kikoma, eloquently and in detail elaborated. Like he talked about the interpretive phenomenology analysis, which is key in the phenomenology research. I hope students who are interested in using this approach have taken note of the key insights that he has provided. Begin as a phenomenology insider. That is the descriptive level. The approaches of phenomenology. It can be descriptive. There you are an insider. You are looking at these issues. The lived experiences and the patterns and how things are emerging. And then after you've known that, you jump out. You jump out. You are no longer an insider, but you become an outsider to interpret these things and give meaning to them. And that's why he was emphasizing the question of transparency, and the question of reflexivity. We thank Professor Kikoma. It is great learning. We have senior scholars who are more oriented into quantitative research, and given the intellectual battle between quantitative and qualitative, there's some quantitative scholars who think qualitative is nothing, is not research. There are qualitative scholars who think, quantitative is preconceived assumptions which you go out there to test, and does not give room, to do in-depth kind of analysis. So when we come through presentations like this, we come moving towards the middle ground, knowing that all these are useful philosophical and methodological approaches that we can use in various researches. And for me, that methodological and cultural kind of integration is very key and is very, very important. So we thank you, Professor Julius, and we thank the colleagues who keep, attending these early morning classes. Yes, we look forward to having more and more of these sessions. It is a Sunday morning. Many of us pray in the morning, but God does not wait for a Sunday. We can have a concluding prayer, and we thank God for the gift of life. We couldn't participate in this if we are not healthy, if we are not strong. We thank God for the gift of wisdom. And more importantly, we thank God also for the willingness to share the wisdom that he gave to us across this greater community of intellectuals who are coming to understand the realities of human life and also improve the realities of human life. As we continue to journey along this community of scholars and the knowledge generation and knowledge utilization, we ask for strength, we ask for steadfastness, we ask for courage to always remain active participants and generators of knowledge. We commit today and the entire week until we meet next week. In Jesus' name I've prayed. Amen.
Amen. Thank you very much. Amen. Dr. Dex.
Amen.
Amen. Next Sunday. May God keep us alive and meet next Sunday again with Professor Chikuma. Thank you. Have a blessed week. And
Thank you.
Thank you too.
And have a good day, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Nice Sunday.
Bye.
Bye, 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 bye.